Hello, hello, and hello again for those who didn't hear me the first two times, I guess. So today is an exciting day. I mean, I guess, sure. Why not? Oh, you can't even see my earrings. I kind of love this combination though, low key. It's like this one is like blossomed, and this one is like the bud. There you go. Or this is like the moon, and this one's like the sun. Anyway, hi, hello, what's up? How's it going? I guess I could take the blur off, but it doesn't. Sure, why not? How is it going? So I've been working on a little something for the past little bit, and there we go. Yeah, I've been working on something for the past little bit, and I finished. Oh, now you can see. Anyway, and yeah, it's done now. So it's something I probably created the first version maybe at the end of last year. So maybe a bit over a year ago or earlier this year. I don't remember because I wanted to roll dice and I didn't have dice to roll, right? And so I figured why not create a whole little desktop app? So that is what I did. And it's very like stage one, version one. Oh my gosh, I turned on my camera and you can't see me. Hi. And there I am. I went to the right input, but I didn't switch on the virtual camera. Anyway, so yeah, I did it. And it's so funny. So I got everything. This is like version 1.2. Um, technically, if there were a release version, like there are some things that I still need to like code into it. But anyway, um, it's like I guess it's version one if that's what I'm doing here, isn't it? So I was thinking because the way that I wrote the code, it makes it possible to roll the four of wands at the cut with that Knight of Pentacles. It makes it possible to roll the same thing. And one thing that I don't necessarily always super enjoy about a deck of cards is, especially if there aren't duplicates, like you only get a card once, right? So, like, let's say you're looking at two different sides of an energy or two different things, and you're using one deck. Like, by default, even if you see the energy on both sides, by default, like the card can only appear once unless you reshuffle, right? And so it's funny because there's like 100 odd things that it could be. And earlier today is, and it's an interesting day. One second. Oh, that's a later thing. Um, well, one second. Sorry. I wouldn't be me. Okay. Yes. So, anyway, sorry. So, I was thinking about it earlier today. I've never had, like, I'll get duplicate duplicates of the other ones, but on the D100, I'll never get duplicate rolls. And there's like 100 different things it could be, right? So there's a 1% chance that anything will pop up. And so, girl, the math escapes me. So, anyway, today, when I did the test roll to make sure, because I have like two different versions of it, I have a version that's all random, and then I have a version that's random or inputs. And I'm going to run the random or inputs today. Because I don't know, I want to do one major, and everything else is going to be random. And then the world and the Knight of Cups at the bottom of the deck with the Three of Pentacles behind the Knight of Cups. And the moon under the Three of Pentacles. The moon, the Three of Pentacles, the moon and the Three of Pentacles gives like a, and the Eight of Pentacles. That's like a secret backer type energy, like a hidden sponsor. But with the Knight of Cups and the world, maybe it's like it comes forward at completion and reveals itself, right? Like maybe, like for an artist that has like a patron, and it's like before they make it big, like there's someone who patronizes them in some way, right? Maybe they like get them supplies or whatever, they support them, and then it's like they make it big, and maybe the person always wonders who this person is, and then the person comes forward, and they come forward not in a like you owe me something, you're only whatever because of me way, but more so in a like I'm so like happy for you and I'm so proud of you, and like I'm so glad that this day has come, like this is the day that I've been supporting you, sort of like I believed in your vision, and now the whole world will get to see your vision, and I'm so happy because it's a vision that I feel needs to be seen type energy, right? And then maybe the person's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know it was you this whole time, like thank you. The Two of Cups and the Seven of Cups just fell out with the Three of Wands at the bottom of the deck. Anyway, when I was doing the test run, because I coded it all in one program, but I'm running a different one. And it was honestly a lot of copy and paste after I figured it out. But I like ran it to make sure, and it happened. I got duplicates. It rolled 3. It was the Five of Pentacles, the Two of Swords, and the Five of Pentacles. And I was like, oh my gosh, it happened. Anyway, so I'm shuffling this up. I had an idea. The title card in the moon. But this title card is all about Pamela Coleman Smith. And I don't know much about the RWS, Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but I know that it seems like for a while, Pamela Coleman Smith maybe didn't get her flowers. And now like more and more and more people are like mentioning her, and we're learning more about her. So like the moon in that Three of Pentacles, it's a non-absent contributor energy maybe, right? But it's like we just don't know about it, right? Potentially. Maybe like the wider public doesn't know, but you know, the folks who know. Like what Watson and Crick, who are credited with the discovery of the sequence or the structure of DNA, but it was like some female scientist who like actually discovered it, and then they kind of got their credit for it. You know what I mean? I mean, history, right? His story. Anyway, it's an ICC. Did I say that? I don't think I did. It's iced coffee. All right, I got my iced coffee. I got my water. I got these crisps. So let's do it. I'm excited. So, and like I've gone through like iterations of this, right? Because at first it was like the bare bones, and then I was like, well, like I want somewhere to like input something like a prompt so that I can remember why I'm rolling why I'm rolling the dice, because so often I forget. So like that, and then I added like a notes thing so that like if I'm doing it and if I'm reading it, I don't have to like type up the notes in like a second different place, right? It's like all in the, I know, right? Anyway, So this, I don't even know what this is going to look like up here. This is the thing. It's very simple. Like I said, it's version 1. What does this look like? Can you read it? I gotta make it bigger. Give me uno moment, por favor. See this? I can move. I could cut this. And then I could make this. I'm sorry. Maybe make this a little bigger. And then do this. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, not only is like the program a work in progress, girl, this setup is a work in progress. With my webcam, the aspect ratio is not like in the 1080p frame. It's like 720, so it's smaller. And I have to like you basically have to manipulate the video to get it to fill the screen. Anyway, so maybe this is more readable slightly. Yeah, I don't have my glasses on, but why not? So yeah, I had the prompt box. I got and also with the Diceology cards, I don't have the cards here either. So I was like, I have all of the images from when I had the deck printed. So I was like, oh, I'll just make a little program for that too. So I can pick a random card. So yeah. Again, I had the idea to, I don't know if the energy of the majors are shifting or if there are, I would say, quite a few energies that are a lot of like archetypal energies, especially, are large enough that we see. Holly, how's it going? How are you? Oh yeah. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year, all the holidays. I hope you have a great time this holiday season. Um, what was I saying? Yeah, they're large enough that we could only see a certain side through a certain context, right? So it's almost like, I don't know, like a building, right? Like if a building has 4 sides, but you only, like, you never venture out to see a different side of the building. Just because we only see one side of that building doesn't mean that the other 3 sides don't exist. It's just like that's the side that we see because that is the perspective. That's the line of sight that we always have because of how we live our lives and travel, right? If we never go east, we'll never see the east face of the building. We'll only see like the west face or whatever. So maybe the context is changing to get us to see a different side or more sides of these majors or whatever. 2 of Pentacles and the Queen of Swords. So I'm gonna random. We're gonna see what it gives us, and then I'm gonna pull before and after, and then we'll compare ? Or I don't know. Did I think this out fully? No. I was gonna just like do like what's in energy for today or the energy for today, but also maybe I'll come back. Maybe not. We'll see. Anyway, let's do it. Let's go. So I will save the prompt for when we actually get the major. I've never. Crap. Okay. I've never tried this before. Let's say I want 2 of these. And then if I uncheck this and I check this, will it? Yes, it does. Okay, nice. All right, so it will keep it. So I can get the major first. First, we'll get a major, and we only want 1. I put the majors on the D20 because it's easy, so we don't see the fool. which in essence, like, we don't see the fool or the world, which I'm not too upset about. Like, we are the fool, and the world is sort of the world. You know what I mean? Meaning, it's almost like if you want to know where the nearest bistro is, and someone's like, it's somewhere on planet Earth, and you're like, all of planet Earth thinks that really narrows it down. I mean, in the entirety of the universe, maybe it does. But being on the planet Earth, it's like there's a whole planet, and there are how many bistros literally all over the world. So anyway, we're gonna get this one first. Oh, I'm kind of like nervous. Judgment. 20 out of 20. Cool. In a way, we just rolled a nat 20. So this is about judgment. And then I uncheck this box and I'll check all the others. And it's R for random. So I'll get a random number of all the other ones. Oh, it happened again. We got doubles again. We got dupes. The five of zones, the four of realms, the five of zones, and Virgo. And it's interesting because before it wasn't the two of swords, it was the two of wands. It was the five of essences, the two of souls, and the five of essences. That's five of cups, two of wands, five of cups. Dupes and the fives. I've also been thinking about, yesterday I was thinking about the number 9 and how if you add 9 to something, it takes one away from the ones place and moves it into the tens place, right? So 10, no, 11 plus 9 is 20, right? So you take 1, it's 1 and 1. You take the 1 in the ones place and you move it to the tens place. So now there's 2 in the tens place and 0 in the ones place. 35 plus 9 is 44, right? You take 1 away from the 5 in the ones place and you add it to the tens place. And then I was like, is there anything you can add to like do the opposite? To take 1 from the ones place and move it to the tens place. And then it's like, yeah, you add -9, just like reverse the process and it does it. And it's like, okay, well, anyway. So judgment, the five of zones, the four of realms, the five of zones again, and Virgo. We also have the throat chakra on the D8, and then Aries and Gemini. Can I use this? I'm like looking at this window. Oh, I can. Nice. It's big enough for me to read. I'm like, what do I do with all this? Five of zones, four of realms, five of zones. So we have earth and air, like there was water and fire earlier. The four of realms being in between these two five of zones, it gives a certain, is that 20? 5 plus 4 plus 5 plus the sixth sign is 20. Interesting. And it's judgment. Look at that. It's almost like, so the thing about zones is they're kind of like ideas. And the thing about realms is like it's the reality. And it's interesting that the five of zones, five of swords energy is here because we saw the five of swords recently in the deck. Now, do I fully remember everything? It was the five of swords. And like, I think it was connected to the page of swords, but the page of swords was connected to the five of wands. And it was that energy that was like, there's something going on that the Page of Swords could put a very swift and very definitive into. And it was a question of like, I think, if I recall correctly, it was a question of whether or not they should, right? Because the Page of Swords is holding a sword and everyone else is holding a wand. But then I'm pretty sure the Five of Swords came out and it was an energy of like, yeah. It's like no contest, no competition. And it's like Virgo is giving me, not only is it giving me a sort of type of balance, but it's also giving me the energy of like, Vestal Virgin purity. And so, especially with this being judgment energy, it's like there's this battle with the four of realms, you could say, is the most base level of existence or the most base level of like life on earth, right? So if you take out all of the subtle, energetic, spiritual influence, it's just like pure living, right? No divine intervention. It's almost like cause and effect, evolution, just like the turning of seasons, stuff like that, right? It's like the bare bones mechanism of like how things work without intervention necessarily. And so it's almost like there are these two ideologies that are at war, or they're like these two schools of thought. And it's like both are trying to manifest into like 3D reality, but it's like neither gives way for the other. And maybe since they're both sitting at this Five of Swords type energy, it's like they're both the top of their class, or they're both like the best, right? They both completely dominate like everything else that they've come up against, but it's kind of sort of like the energy of the immovable object meets the unstoppable force. And honestly, with Virgo, I don't know. I'm almost tempted to say that like it's in it. I was thinking about devil energy earlier today because sometimes when I read the devil card, it's not necessarily like devil energy. Sometimes it's like the energy of something that's been demonized. And sometimes it's been demonized for a particular reason, right? And how it's like, because it's like, the devil is like Lucifer is a fallen angel. And it's almost like, and I heard somebody say this years ago, I feel like at this point, like, even though he fell, he still can't help but do what he was created to do as an angel, right? So it's almost very much that, like, even if we go through challenging times and trials and tribulations, sometimes, though, it's those very things that help us get where we're going the most, right? Like the moon and the Three of Pentacles, that mysterious backer energy. It was like the person who was the loudest hater. And maybe they were the loudest hater because they were your toughest critic, because they believed in you the most. And they could see the areas in which you were lacking. And the criticism was meant to be constructive, but we couldn't take it in a constructive way. So we just wrote it off as a hater until one day we take in the feedback, maybe our eyes open, and we like, oh, okay, like maybe like, oh yeah, okay, I do actually see where this person is coming from, and then things work out. Not necessarily that, but for the sake of a metaphor, let's say it's kind of like that, right? Now, why do I bring that up? Oh, because it's like it's this almost like this good versus evil type of whatever. And it feels like it stagnated things in the Four of Realms. Again, it's like the four is the first point of stability. And stability, if something is stable, it's not necessarily always good, right? If something is predictable, it's not necessarily always predictable for a good in a good way, right? You could say, oh, every time this person comes back from work, they're in a bad mood. That's stable. That's predictable. They went to work today. They're going to come home. They're in a bad mood. They went to work today. They came home. They're in a bad mood. Like, it happens every single time. The six is like a kind of harmony where it's like stable, but like better. But once you get to the seven and beyond, that's when you start to become aware of like underlying factors, right? So, like maybe someone got a new job and now if they go to work, they come home in a great mood. You could say that's the harmony of the six, but getting into the seven, it's like, well, what's the difference between the old one and this one that now when they come back from home, they're in a great mood. Well, maybe now they feel appreciated at work, or maybe now they get acknowledgement for the things that they do, right? So the seven would start to come in and be like, okay, so appreciation, acknowledgement, a feeling of like fair compensation, like these are the things that motivate or inspire the harmony of the six. And then from like 8, 9, 10, you fine tune those things to get it in this perfected state that's better than it naturally sort of like exists, right? Or better than the first experience of like stability, whatever. But it feels like it's kind of like almost like deadlocked because again, it's a five and a five. Unstoppable object, unstoppable force meets immovable object, and I guess an unstoppable object is an unstoppable force because if you can't stop it, then it's gonna keep going. Anyway, it feels like it's caused things to stagnate, which makes it feel like Virgo energy is coming in to because it's like as things stagnate, sometimes they start to like fester and then things get not great. So judgment, it's almost Virgo's interference, Virgo stepping in to break the tie. Right. Now, this is between Aries and Gemini energy. It feels like Aries is the go, 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 do, do, do. Gemini is the one that thinks it knows better. Not to say that Gemini doesn't know better, not to say that action isn't necessary. But again, you could say it's kind of that like head versus heart, or it's that like id versus the ego, logic versus intuition. And it feels like with the Aries Gemini extreme, it feels like it's hard to get past the six into the seven because there's something about the way that the thing is with that more like Aries energy, almost face value. Not that Aries, not at all. Because I don't know, I have a lot of Aries in my life and I love them all, and none of them are surface level. But it's like when you're in that mode of momentum, then things can get almost like fall into a pattern. It's almost Taurian in a way. That's kind of maybe just like habits, patterns, things like that. Like it's a rhythm. When things get into a rhythm, it becomes predictable, right? More or less. Which, as a complete side note, I listen to some like there are some songs that I love just because the music does interesting things that I don't expect. You know what I mean? Like maybe it'll be an off count or something will come in like later early, and I love it anyway. There are a few songs in my like liked playlist that I don't necessarily like. I'm not necessarily super crazy about like the lyrics or the song itself, but it's just like an instrumentality and something that I just like love. I love it's like a fun listen anyway. And Gemini, it's almost like more of the theory and the logic, and it's like you have to marry the theory with actual practice to reach that like 8, 9, 10, right? To enter a sort of apprenticeship to become an adept, and then to go through the process to become your own master, and then to be recognized, essentially, right? That's that world card energy. Um, and again, it's like when these two like schools of thought almost are so opposed because they don't want to cede any ground to their opposition. It's like Aries won't necessarily, the Aries energy, the first Five of Swords energy, won't necessarily see the motivators or the effects of the motivators. But the Gemini energy or the other Five of Swords energy, it won't see like the reality, right? Because it's like it's one thing to like say or to see that something is successful somewhere. And sometimes when we see success, we like to replicate success. But it's like with that, if that Gemini energy were to account for the Aries energy, it's like that Gemini energy would see like the process is different here. The culture is different here. This place is on the west, or this place is on the east side. So they see the west side of the building. And so, like, the west side of the building is a different color than the east side of the building because with how the sun travels in the sky for the majority of the year, the east side gets a lot of sun exposure and the west side doesn't. So the east side is faded, right? The people on the east side, they don't know that the building is actually this really vibrant red because it's been baked and so now it looks kind of brown, you know what I mean? Or it's like that rusted bricky sort of color. But the people on the west side, they see this like vibrant whatever, they're like, wow, you know, because they get to appreciate it. Or because it's less sun baked, less desaturated. um, so it's like if Gemini were to actually look at the reality of things, it's like, okay, like, you know, I know that acknowledgement is a big motivator of, or a big factor in like motivated employees. So I will acknowledge people the way that I like to be acknowledged, or I will follow this model of acknowledgement. And it's like, well, maybe your team or maybe your employees or maybe the people that you're creating this for, like, they don't feel acknowledged in those ways, right? You can go to the love languages, right? Maybe someone is more like words of affirmation. And so people do all of the, you know, we have our employee of the month, and maybe somebody is more like a gift giving or something else. And they're like, well, like they name you employee of the month and it doesn't mean anything. Like you don't get a raise, you don't get a pizza party, you don't get anything but your name in the newsletter for that month and maybe your picture up on the board for a week. And that's it. Like, is that supposed to motivate me? For some people, it works again. And so it's like, that's where it's like when you bridge the two, when it's like it brings something to life. Because otherwise, and it's funny because this is almost more Sagittarius versus Gemini, with Sagittarius being the sage, being like higher learning and philosophy and stuff like that, it can run into the whole like it dives into the theory of things. But and then Gemini is more of the like grounded, like not secular, but it's like it's not locked away in a tower somewhere. It's like, you know, well, I canvass the neighborhood or I spend time amongst the people and I know that like this is what people do in real life, right? So it's interesting again that like instead of Sagittarius Gemini, it's Aries Gemini. Maybe that's this sextile relationship versus an opposition. Yeah, it's a sextile. And with the sextile, it's like they're supposed to be harmonious. They're not necessarily on the same page. Like they don't necessarily have the same background and they're not necessarily taking the same approach, but they're supposed to be working together. But with this 5 and 5, like neither side, especially 5 of swords, neither side giving way to the other, what is supposed to work harmoniously together to give a greater understanding of the world, of the planet Earth, of everything. It's like it keeps things stuck in a certain city of a certain state or province of a certain nation on a certain continent in a certain hemisphere. Cool. Now, the throat being here is interesting because it actually feels like the throat plays into the trumpet in judgment. And maybe it feels like, especially in these days and times, right? I mean, violence is still very much so a thing, but it's almost like there's so much of the conversations. And it's like, it's almost like we kind of went from like, we need to talk about stuff, right? We need to have these conversations. And now it's like, there's just like arguing, or it's like cacophonous. So what was supposed, again, like what was supposed to be like a conversation, this symphony, this orchestra, this masterpiece of things sort of like working together and maybe sounding a little bit more predictable, ends up being just like audio, audible chaos. And it's like, again, violence is still a thing that happens all over the world, unfortunately. But it's like, there are like tongue lashings and like these verbal arguments. And I guess it makes sense again because this is like the 5 of air, the 5 of swords, the 5 of zones. So it's almost like not only is because I'm thinking of the 5 of zones, especially as a zone, and the 4 of realms, especially as like Earth. And it's almost like someone's ideology or thinking, it's not necessarily as big as a complete ideology. So I won't say like it feels like the ideology, excuse me, is flawed. But there's something with like the implementation of the ideology or the specifics of something. I don't know, for some reason the 5 of zones, it's feeling like fundamentally flawed. And again, it's like each side could see the flaws of the other. And rather than that being a constructive conversation, it ends up being this cacophonous blame game type whatever. Right. So I'm going to pull a card and then I'll pull cards. So, shuffle deck. Oh, yeah. Boom. There you go. It pops up this window. I know, right? And then I hit the shuffle button. So there are typos in this. I started with great intentions. And by the time I got to the end, I was just ready to be done. And like, since I created it, like, there were certain things that I just didn't catch. So if we get a typo, girl, I know it's a typo. Okay. I never reprinted them um, because I know what it's supposed to say and I'm not distributing it. And, so it's like, what's the point? Anyway, prophetic dreams, inspired action, tapping into the other side. I don't have how I linked these two. Oh, you don't see Virgo. I don't have how I link these to the actual cards in the deck, so that's fine. Whenever I had to figure out how to like scale it, because the image is a lot bigger than the tiny container I put it in, and when I just scaled it down, it looked fuzzy. So it looks better. But anyway, prophetic dreams inspired action, tapping into the other side. I was going to think about astrologically what's in Aries and Gemini, but it's fine. Tapping into the other side, I'm going to say low hanging fruit is seeing things from the other perspective. It's the East Siders going over to the West Side so they can see the East side of the building. Question mark? No. Yeah, girl. And it's the West Siders going over to the East Side so they can see the East side of the building. Right? Because if you're east of something, and it's like here, this is the building, it's a circle, but it's a square, right? This is the east side of the building. This is the east side. So if you're on the east side, you see the east side of the building. So it's the east siders going to the west side to see the west side of the building. It's the west siders going over to the east side to see the east side of the building. Now the east siders discover, oh my gosh, like this is like actually vibrant. Like what? I didn't know there was so much like life in this, you know, because it's so sun baked on the east side. And the west siders are like, oh, like, I don't know, something about the sunrise, like getting those, like the building may be a little faded, but it's because it gets so much sun exposure. And, you know, it's very much that the people who like thrive in the summer, it's like that kind of energy. They're like, oh my gosh, like I'm thriving. Like we don't get this. Something about the early morning sun just clears it up. And, you know, on the west side, the building is blocking the sun in those early morning hours. So we don't get it because then we're in shadow. And by the time the sun is over here, it's like setting. Type energy. Anyway, tapping into the other side is seeing that like valid. Um, right now I'm in London, and that has 2025 has been almost literally from the start to literally the end. It has been so unexpected in so many ways, both tragic and beautiful. Um, but yeah, I'm over here right now. Yeah, you can't tell by the background that's not my background. So tapping into the other side, low hanging fruit is seeing the validity. It's like seeing the constructive feedback buried beneath the criticism. Or it's like it's an openness to see beyond, because you could say like we are creatures both spiritual and physical. And so in essence, as correct or incorrect as it may be, if we are creatures both physical and spiritual, both logical and emotional, then it is for us to integrate elements of both and to not have one completely dominate the other or vice versa. Now, what we have here is dreams on one side and action on the other, right? So, I guess if I had to, low hanging fruit, we would give inspired action to Aries, excuse me, and we would give prophetic dreams to Gemini. Now, the fundamentally flawed, and again, this is no dig at Aries. This is not applicable for Aries individuals overall. If we have to find the fundamental flaw, the fundamental flaw of the inspiration of Aries could be its own like desires, for instance, right? Like this is something that I want, and the divine says that. Oops, sorry. Let me put this down. That's noisy. The divine says that all of my wants should be fulfilled. So, because this is something that I want, I am inspired to do this thing that I want to do. And it's like, or it could be like selective hearing or whatever. Again, not at all unique to Aries, not at all. Maybe in a way of something that's more infantile, sure, right? Before we learn that, to listen to the entirety of the thing and not just hear what we want to hear. Now, the prophetic dreams, the fundamental flaw in that could be that not everyone necessarily shares the same dream, right? And if Gemini is sitting in this more, I almost want to say theological, but more ideological, philosophical sort of position, it's like one person's ideology, philosophy, truth isn't necessarily relevant, applicable, true for everyone. And again, it's that whole like, well, employee of the week, month, day, year, decade works really well over here because this is a demographic of people who love that kind of recognition. But over here, when it comes to the people where words are just words and they don't mean nothing, that's not a motivator. They see the employee of the day, week, month, year, second, hour, minute as the sucker of that time frame. Congratulations. You did all that work for a picture and a name and maybe a certificate that means nothing. You can't take certificates to the bank. And just because you were employee of the week for 12 months straight doesn't mean they're going to give you that raise. They really love you where you are, and they're not going to move you. And if you want to get ahead, then you got to move on up. Right? And so you could say it's to find like true inspiration. Like prophetic dreams and inspired action, again, like with this sextile energy and with just the energy of these two things itself, it feels like they're supposed to blend together, right? So the prophetic dream is the thing that inspires the action, but it's not an action that's taken from like such a self focus. Like there's an understanding of the prophecy in the dream that allows one to navigate in a certain way, right? Because a dream without action is just a dream. And just because you dream it doesn't necessarily mean it will come true. If you have a dream that you go, I don't even want to use that example, but for example, it's a metaphor. Take it as it resonates if it resonates, and please let it apply where it applies. Um, it's like if you have a dream, it's low hanging fruit. You have a dream that you go get a lottery ticket and then you hit the big bucks. And so you wake up like, whoa, like I'm going to come into like a whole bunch of money, but you never go and get the ticket. Like that's the thing that you did in the dream to make the thing a reality. Like even in the dream, you still had to go and do something. It didn't just come to you, but it's like we treat prophecy as something that is destined to happen. This is the fundamental flaw of the prophetic dream. We treat it as if it is guaranteed to happen and there's nothing that we have to do in order to make that true. And it's like, that's not the case. In this instance, an example, if it is the case for you, hopefully your intuition discernment is on point enough to know that you ain't got to do nothing. Right? But yeah, it's like it's missing that action piece. And sometimes the inspiration is so self focused or self centered that it's missing that bigger picture sort of piece, or that greater, grander vision sort of piece, right? Like, let's say that someone is going to be extremely wealthy. I feel like that goes back into the prophetic dream a little bit. But it's just like, if someone got the whole picture, they would know that their wealth comes from, like, they treat their employees really well and they sell a product or provide a service that works and that doesn't give people a whole bunch of side effects. And it's like, for that, like, if that is what it's based upon, then like there are certain ways you can't cut corners, or you can't do these cost saving, cost effective, whatever. Because if your employees are unhappy, then your turnover is going to be, like, you won't be able to keep quality talent. And if your product comes with a whole bunch of side effects, then the customer base may decide that it's more trouble than it's worth. And so if someone's like, oh yeah, to save cost, you can switch over to this thing, or you can eliminate that. And it's like, you can essentially get rid of everything that makes the success successful. And then it's like, if you get rid of everything that makes it successful, then the success will eventually turn into a failure. You know what I mean? Has a high probability. If people love your product for the real, not fake, whatever, and you substitute it with something else that's both real and fake, they're gonna notice. And the very thing that they love about your product, it's not gonna be in there anymore. So there's not gonna be a reason for them to continue to whatever, right? More so on the first part. Like, it's a whole picture type thing. And especially like with the way we treat people, for example, like the happy employees, it's like, you can't just be like, well, I'm the boss and what I say goes and blah, 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 blah. Again, pot kettle, maybe. We can't be so like obstinate or bullheaded that we don't like listen. The Lovers and the Seven of Cups at the cut. I'm going to give it one more shuffle. We're going to pull before and after the Judgment card, and we'll see what is up. From the bottom of the deck is the Six of Swords, and Death is behind the Six of Swords. I feel like we've seen this combination. The Devil, the Ace of Wands, Death, and the Six of Swords. Ten of Cups is on the other side of the Devil energy. The Devil in between the Ten of Cups and the Ace of Wands, that gives almost something like, again, that's the energy of like something that's been demonized. Well, it could be something that's been demonized. It could also be like actual like devil energy, especially in the way of like addiction and stuff like that, right? Where it's like, this is something that makes me feel like really, really good. And it's like, just because it makes us feel good doesn't necessarily mean it's good for us, to keep us, for in terms of like longevity and posterity and stuff like that. Cool. We're looking for Judgment. Judgment is in between the Tower and the Ten of Wands. After the Ten of Wands is the Chariot. Before the Tower is the Seven of Wands. This is interesting. So yeah, Judgment is feeling like that Virgo energy, whose mission and or task it is to, these cards sometimes sideways, upside down, is to break the stagnation. and to bring movement to a situation, because if it's stagnant and still, it is a breeding ground for bacteria and illness and a whole bunch of other stuff. Name a malady. But this is so because the Ten of Wands is a card of being like overburdened. And so it's something that, although incredibly taxing, this individual is still holding on to and is bound and determined to get all 10 of those wands to wherever it needs to go. The Tower, it's interesting that the Tower is on the other side because Tower energy isn't necessarily something that we're in control of. So you could say it's like not letting something go, not letting the very things that need to be let go go, not letting go of the things that need to be let go of. That need to be, yeah, anyway. And with the Seven of Wands on the other side of this, oh gosh, on the other side of this tower, this is a 7-7 energy. There's a 7-7-7 here with the my birth cards with the Chariot, the Tower, and the Seven of Wands. There's this like 7-7-7, but also there's a 10-10-10 or XXX between the Ten of Wands and Judgment, since it's all Roman numerals. I was gonna say, with the Seven of Wands being behind this tower, either we only need 7 out of 10 of these wands, or we only need 1 out of the 10 because that's the one that he's holding. And it's interesting that we saw the Ace of Wands flanking that devil energy, because if it is only the one wand, that's the one that he's holding. The 10 and the 1 are numerologically the same. Ten minus 9. Wow. Should I look before and after the 9 of Wands? The difference between 10 and 1 is you take the 1 from the 10's place and you move it into the 1's place. Now, instead of the 9 of Wands, I could look before and after the Hermit, that I don't think I've seen, because this is the Tower. I think the Ace of Swords and the Ace of Cups are together. The Hermit is in between the Three of Cups and the Ace of Pentacles. The Page of Swords is behind it, with the King of Wands behind that, and they're both looking at the Three of Pentacles. Justice, the Knight of Wands, and the Knight of Swords with the Star, the Ace of Cups and the Ace of Swords are all before the Three Cups. Numerologically similar, the Ace of Wands and the Ten of Wands, but not the same. And I guess the difference is, you could say, yeah, Six of Swords, Death, Ace of Wands. I almost kept these cards aside with the Devil and the Ten of Cups behind the Ace of Wands. So flanking the Ace of Wands, it's the Ten of Cups and the Devil on one side. and then Death and the Six of Swords on the other. That Page of Pentacles, Queen of Pentacles, that is so interesting because that reminds me of, that's where I've seen the King of Wands lately. It reminds me of some reading that I did recently where there was like some, like a divine energy, right? And I'm pretty sure it was like that interviewer, interviewee type thing. And maybe this taps into the fundamental flaw that can be around prophetic dreams, where it was that whole thing of like, if you find a wallet full of money with identification that has the exact amount of money you've been manifesting or whatever, it's that it was that whole like the divine can give you what you're manifesting, wishing for, praying for, hoping for, and more without it coming out of someone else's pocket, without it essentially being stolen. I don't know why I put stolen in. Is it stolen if it's found? Without it not being returned to its rightful owner. And you never know. You could return the wallet with all the money, and the person is so grateful that they give it to you, right? That actually reminds me of something I've seen in a show recently. That, yeah, I think that exact thing happened. It was in, I don't remember the name of the show, but it was like really big last season, and every episode was like a whole production, and like they were like some of them in long, some of them in short. There was this one guy, his track, because there were different, like the major arcana was a part of it, and there were different like pathways to get whatever. Girl, it was one of those types of animes, and there was someone on the seer path, I'm pretty sure, and he had like said his little mantra prayer thing to the goddess to give him a certain amount of money so he could, I don't know, spend it on whatever. And he literally found a wallet that was like stuffed to the brim, and he returned the wallet to the person, and the person was like basically a noble. And the new guy was like, why did you return the money? Like, didn't you just ask the goddess for money? And like, you found the wallet that was full of money, and like, you gave it away. And he was like, the goddess wouldn't bless me, or the goddess wouldn't bring me money in that way. And because the guy was noble, he was thankful, and maybe he gave him the money in the wallet or something like that. He got what he was asking for, and he didn't get it by taking the low hanging fruit of stealing the money, essentially. That's where, anyway. Oh, yeah, because it was that energy of like, so that came out first, but then there was something else, something that looked divine, maybe. And it was like a test by the divine to almost see what we really think of the divine, right? And so if you take a historic tragedy that was done, girl, that's, we ain't gotta get, we don't have to go all the way into it. That energy is here. I don't remember why exactly. But yeah, this, the devil in between the 10 of, oh yeah, yeah. It was because there's an element of passion. With the Ace of Wands energy, someone could gladly, and maybe at the beginning of this person's long journey, it was very like, you know, but eventually over time, the wands got heavy. When it comes to something that we're passionate about, we find the time, we find the resources, we find the energy. But if we're doing something that we're dispassionate about, as much as light as passion and those investments can make something light, the absence of them, the absence of it can make those things heavy. And this is giving more of that demonized energy. It almost reads as very like puritanical in the way of like deny yourself pleasure, deny yourself happiness, deny yourself joy, because joy is sinful. And again, with because this is still devil energy, girl. So, it's not necessarily one of those, go full hedonist and embrace all of the whatever, because some of that stuff ain't necessarily, it also can be, it can turn into addiction, it can turn into toxicity, it can turn into something not what it was supposed to be. Right. So maybe it's a fine line. Oh, the fundamental flaw in prophetic dream. It could be that. That's where I was like, how did I get on that whole like it's a test from the divine to see what we think divinity like is, or how divinity like shows up, or the limitations of divinity in a way, right? So to go from the 10 of wands to the ace of wands, we have to subtract 9. So I went looking for a major 9 because this is the tower, right? The hermit is turned his back on the 3 of cups and is facing towards the ace of pentacles. Low hanging fruit. There could be factors in our surrounding. It's like we're not going to get the west side view on the east side. No matter how we move, we will never see the west side of the building if we stay to its east. And so, following the star, the hermits had to venture away from this 3 of cups energy. Again, because it's subtracting 9, it does feel it it lends more to that whole like walking away from 3 of cups to find the ace of pentacles. Even this chariot, and the chariot after the 10 of wands is holding that one rod. It's almost giving fine line energy. Because again, it's like this devil ace of wands death. And then outside of that is the 10 of cups and the 6 of swords. Like overindulgence leads to like overindulgence is why devil energy is devil energy. Overindulgence, but it's not like the enjoyment of the very things that the divine is like giving, granting, bestowing, fulfilling. Right. So again, it's like there's an excess, and when that becomes devil energy. And it feels like there's this like deprivation. Again, to each their own, right? This is general, and therefore not for like literally the whole Gemini thing. Right? This ain't for everybody, and especially like not as is. Like if it resonates for you in a certain way, and that's what you get out of this, follow that thread. Follow your intuition, utilize your connection, follow that thread. And again, that's why it feels like a fine line, because it's almost like how it's like if the source of your abundance comes from the divine and the way you do whatever you do, right? And it gets you accustomed to a certain way of living. It feels like that's the fine line between like not giving over to like opulence, or opulence in a way of like excess, right? There's a difference between abundance and like opulence. It's like when it becomes opulent, it it's stripped of its substance and it becomes like a status symbol. It's stripped of its substance and it becomes a symbol. And like that's the fine line. Like it feels like from the human like 3D living life perspective, the line is like so fine. But it feels like from a different perspective, it's not. Like it's like it's actually very like broad. There is a little bit of a moon energy here. Because this Ace of Pentacles, again, it's like the Hermit has gone on its journey, leaving its comfort zone, all it knows, following the star in the cold. And because the Ace of Pentacles is literally this pentacle in the hand that's coming out of a cloud, it's like it almost like it comes out of nowhere. There is no set destination. It could happen at any point in any time, which means it could also happen immediately. But at the same time, it means that it could be a while. So it feels like that's when this devil energy morphs into the whole like, you've been at this for a while. Why don't you just take this or take that? Again, I talked about it, it came up recently. It was like when Jesus was in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, and his stomach maybe got a little grumbly, and devil energy popped up and was like, hey, like, you're literally Jesus. Like, you could turn that rock into a loaf of bread and not be hungry. And again, it's kind of in the vein of like, who do we think the divine is, or like type of energy. And Jesus was Jesus, so of course Jesus was like, if you don't go on and get out of here. Like if I were supposed to be eating a loaf of bread right now, there would be a loaf of bread for me to eat right now. I wouldn't have to turn a rock into a loaf of bread. If bread is what I needed, bread is what the divine would have provided, and you wouldn't be here trying to tell me to type energy. And again, the thing with this Ace of Pentacles is like we don't necessarily know when it'll happen. Like there is an almost world energy here, right? With the I just saw her. Pretty sure she was on the top of the stack in these not too many cards. So I guess she wasn't. Was she in the second part of the stack? Yeah, she's right there. Oh yeah, with the Knight of yeah. The Four of Wands is before the world. I caught that. You see like this, and then with the Ace of Pentacles, it's like that. But this is in the foreground, that's in the background. Maybe again, that's that energy. The Knight of Cups is still behind this world card. The Four of Wands is on the other side. maybe again that's that energy of like the secret backer sort of like making themselves known, right? So 40 days is up, Jesus gets out of the desert, the divine shows up, like, oh my gosh, like, congratulations, girl, you did it. I know devil energy popped up and tried to tempt you to eat some like rock bread or what, like, what even is that? Right? You could change the, anyway. Then it's like, oh my gosh, see, I knew. Um, and so the Ace of Coins could be the thing, but it's like, it's so weird to say that or to think that, and maybe again, this gets into the fundamental flaw of the prophetic dream or the inspired action when they're separate. Because it's almost like the Ace of Pentacles is so heavy, and it's heavy with the weight of gold. It's so heavy and it's so much that it in and of itself has the power to completely change one's life. But in a certain way, it's almost like the Ace of Pentacles is a reward. So it would come after that like world energy and not be the thing that initiates someone into world energy or is like the precursor to that world energy. And it's almost like this flipping of cause and effect, or it's almost like this flipping of um not like how things are supposed to go, but it's very like you don't put the cart before the horse because the horse draws the cart, but you have to hitch the horses to the cart, and so you can load up the cart before you hitch the horses to, and like chariot energy is right here too. The Knight of Wands and the Knight of Swords are together somewhere. Again, I guess they're on the other side. Ooh, the pages are together too. Ace of Cups. Yeah, it was Ace of Cups, Ace of Swords, the Star. Oh, look. I was going to look before and after the Star. The Star is in between the Ace of Cups and the Knight of Swords. Prophetic Dream, Ace of Cups, Inspired Action, Knight of Swords. That's the wind behind the sails of the Knight of Swords. That's why he can move so fast. It's the marriage of those two things. And when they work together, of course, things are a lot quicker because they're not stagnating when they're sort of opposing. The Knight of Swords and the Knight of Wands are together. Justice was on the other side of that Knight of Wands. So the Knight of Wands and the Knight of Swords literally sandwiched in between Justice and the Star, which is Libra and Gemini. Sorry, Libra and Aquarius. And it's funny because Gemini is here. Knight of Swords, mutable air, and Gemini. Gemini Sagittarius, mutable air, mutable fire. In their opposition, there is the Star and there is Justice. Again, it's just like what is supposed to be harmonious has become cacophonous. And instead of things working together, they stagnate out. And I don't like justice is there. It's not major arcana justice. It's like Two of Pentacles, maybe. Um, where it's like there's a difference between like an equilibrium and something stagnating, right? Anyway, I really got to go to the restroom. So take a moment because I'm going to take a few. So I know that was quick. I washed my hands, I promise. I was thinking about, yeah. So this is supposed to, like, Aries and Gemini is a sextile. These are things that are supposed to work together, but for some reason they're stalling the other out. And thinking on like the stagnation versus equilibrium, with equilibrium, there is no overall change in a process, right? If you make $10 today and you spend $10 today, you have a net zero profit. That's equilibrium. Stagnation would be you don't make anything and you don't spend anything. You don't spend anything because you didn't make anything, or vice versa. However, you can vice versa that. And so that's also a net zero profit, but that's very different. Equilibrium is a very different energy than stagnation. And it's almost like, and then that got me thinking of the throat and the die that it came out on. I mean, symbolically, of course. And so now, and again, there was something about the throat linking to the horn and judgment. It's like there was something said. There is no D6 here. And so it's like there's no, the D6 is null and the D4 is null. There is no element here because this, it makes sense. It's not, it supersedes, transcends elemental, whatever, physicality, right? It's again, it's like it's an extremely base level, whatever, that's trying to incorporate more, but it stalls out because it's too grounded. Again, it doesn't see the west side of the thing, so it doesn't know the building in its truth. And the west side doesn't see the east side of the thing and the same, right? People on the west side could think that that thing would be just as vibrant anywhere. And it's like, well, actually, if you saw this with sun exposure, you would know that it's not that vibrant on the other side. However that looks. But again, but because there's the throat on the D8 and nothing on the D6, it's almost like there's no, it's like there's no internalization of something. And it's like, imagine like something is said and it like goes right over our head, right? I feel like that's one thing, but it's a different thing when something is said and we think we know, like we think we got it. And so to us, we understood completely. We understand the assignment and we are going to execute. But it's like maybe we're executing like all the wrong things, or not all the wrong things, but it's like there's something missing, something vital to the thing. And without that key component, no matter how on the rest of it is, it's like a miss, right? It's like, let's say someone's asking for something to be delivered and everything is delivered exactly how they want it, but it's in a language that they don't understand. Or someone was like 26, like giving, it's the whole like dimensions thing. So, like when you work or design internationally, especially for countries that use different systems, it's very important to, excuse me, note the like units of measure, right? If you have a length and you say 5, and where you come from, that's 5 centimeters or 5 meters or whatever the standard is, it's safe to assume that if you just put 5, the other person is going to know. But if you take that to the US, girl, they use feet and inches and yards, and 5 inches is not 5 centimeters, is not 5 meters, 5 feet is not 5 meters. They're different. And so I feel like, I went to an engineering school. So of course I've heard stories about like a part was assembled in another country and there was a unit mismatch. So it was built perfectly, but using like the wrong sizes. And there's not necessarily, well, I mean, I guess there's what, 2.54 roughly centimeters to the inch. So it was scaled. You could say it could be scaled. But again, like it wasn't right. And it feels like with the null and the D6, whatever was said at the D8 with that throw, it just like wasn't picked up. So maybe with that context, the 3 of Cups is, but again, that was the whole thing about the East Siders going to the West Side and vice versa. So we have the Hermit moving out of the 3 of Cups and finding the Ace of Pentacles. Cool. All right. I think an hour and a half. Yeah, I think that's enough. So I guess this judgment energy would be, this is almost like judgment is a return. And there's a whole, why not? Let's say like, oh girl, again, we'll just keep with the same metaphor, right? There is a person who is deciding on which contractor to go with for a very large project, and the project is so large that whichever company gets this contract, it's Ace of Pentacles for them. It's going to elevate their business to a whole other level, right? So they send out the like a blueprint, the same blueprint to every company, and they're assessing the quality of the construction of whatever, right? And again, like, let's say that things are made plain. So it is like 5 inches this thing and 5 feet this thing and then 5 yards another thing. I guess yeah, five is five, 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 five. We've been on the fives. I was gonna be like, I guess we're stuck on fives. Um, and maybe there's one person at one company that's like, I don't know what inches and feet and yards are, but the thing that's 5 inches looks shorter than the thing that's 5 feet, so we'll call that 5 centimeters. And so this 5 feet thing must be 5 meters, and then 5 yards is like bigger than the feet, so that'll be 5 kilometers. And then, girl, it's like you got a one to something of a 12th to something of a 36th versus one to something of a hundredth to something of a thousand, no, 100,000th question mark. Because it's one, 100, 1,000, girl, 1,000. Duh. One to 100 to 1,000, which is a completely different scale than like one to 5 feet would be 60. Or no, because it's five of each, right? So that's one to 100 to 1,000 is completely different than one to 12 to 36. Because there's 12 feet in every inch, and then there's 36. Or there's 12 inches for every foot, and then 36 inches for every yard. So that's a 1 to 12 to 36 versus a 1 to 100 to 1,000. Oh God, sometimes I get so deep in the metaphor, I do get a little lost, and then I gotta try to follow the train tracks back to the last station. Because this judgment Virgo energy. And then it's the assessment. Like the day comes to turn everything in. And let's say that there is something of superior quality, but the scale is all the way off. And like there was no asking for clarification. There was no, it's almost like to the person where the scale is completely off, you could say it's like if you see the schematic, even if you don't understand like the inches to feet to yards thing, like the scale of 1 to 100 to 1,000, it's just like it's that red flags sort of energy. Again, with the interview thing, it's like it's a red flag sort of energy. And there is also something of a seasonality here. And also, again, well, this nine, the hermit is sort of clarifying that tower energy to take it from the 10 of wands to an ace of wands. This it came out as the 7 of wands because again, with this whole new world energy, there is a sort of position of advantage that someone could be in. This is like a very powerful backer. And what backer is more powerful than the divine, really? You know what I mean? But sometimes, so not all the time, but sometimes something divine could read as quiet, while something of like double energy is very like um loud and showy. And there's a word for loud and showy, in your face. And so sometimes we can look at the in your face thing as more popular, successful, powerful. But it's like if you really knew, you'd know it's like 99% bluster. But, bluster is what puts cool. I don't even think anything's in Virgo. I mean, it's not Virgo zodiacally. Oh, it's the Hermit. The Hermit is Virgo. LOL. I just did the Hermit because it's a major arcana 9. Cool, love it. I didn't even catch that. Yeah. And there is something, it's almost like this is also the reason why the tower is here. Because this Ace of Pentacles is so closely tied to the world. The Ace of Pentacles has the power to completely change someone's way of life. And when someone's way of life completely changes, it's like you can, it may not be wise to handle things the way that you've always handled things. Because it's like from a distance, the star is like really small. But when you get closer, the pinnacle is a lot bigger. And so it almost reads as like something that's way more than what someone thought they were like bargaining for. But again, that's like the divine has the power to exceed. And it doesn't come at the expense of someone else's misfortune. It doesn't have to come at the expense of someone else's misfortune. If there is a reshuffling of things, your intuition discernment will hopefully tell you in the situation what is applicable for you. If it's strong for you, if this resonates for you, then you have a strong discernment and it will tell you. Even though this is, I'm sorry. But it does give the energy of something that's a lot more than what someone bargained for. And it's because distance, honestly. Right. Like the sun is the biggest thing in our sky. The sun is the biggest celestial body in our sky. There are stars that are a lot smaller than the sun. There's the moon. That, depending on its phase, I mean, eclipses happen. So, technically, depending on the phase, there are times when the moon appears to be as big as the sun, if not bigger. But we know that it's not. And that's the point. It feels like, but again, that almost feels like the tower. And this would be like a good tower. This is someone being evaluated favorably, right? So someone completed the assignment as intended. Now they have this like major contract that rockets them into another stratosphere, if not planet, when it comes to businesses. Because it's like, whoa, if this person or if this company trusts you to conduct their business, if they're impressed by your like the quality of your whatever, then we know, because that person company is very hard to impress. And to get that business means that you, and again, that could put someone in a completely different environment, and overwhelm at that point could be very, it could come very easily and understandably. And so if that's the case, then this 10 of Wands becomes about management and delegation. How can you properly manage and delegate all that this status or change in positioning? How can you properly like delegate it in a way that it doesn't overtax or overburden you, but at the same time, you're not sacrificing in quality or whatever made whoever love whatever so much? And so maybe someone is used to being more of the boots on the ground type of person, doing everything themselves, and they're going to get into like this overseeing sort of potential. So rather than doing everything, it's like they hold the reins and they like drive something anyway. Take it if it resonates as it resonates. But there is elevation here. Rightfully so, rightfully deserved, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't come with its own challenges. It's not giving necessarily. I mean, to me, it's not. It's not giving that it's lonely at the top energy because the Seven of Wands is here on the other side of the tower. But it does. Maybe loneliness, quote unquote, is one of the challenges that comes with being at the top. 1 second. Sorry. All right. Yeah. Cool. I mean, we've seen. Was it the? I think it was the Emperor. The Emperor that had that aura, and Justice that had the aura. It's like things are moving in certain ways, and yeah, it's like I don't know. Right wins. Oh, look, there's that title card again. Cool. Should I get a final shuffle? Sure, why not? I'm not gonna do a final roll because that's a lot. But I will get a final shuffle of Queen of Swords at the bottom of the deck. A final shuffle of the deck. Boom, 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 boom. A blistering heat and freezing cold that lies in the heart of creation. The truth of the heart made plain and beginnings. This is the balancing of forces. So basically, chariot energy. Well, you could say it's the balancing of forces. But it doesn't necessarily feel like it. I mean, the forces are balanced. It's like it's a environment, it's a place where the forces are naturally balanced because they have reached that equilibrium. To replicate that balance under different circumstances, to replicate that equilibrium under different circumstances, there is a balance that has to be imposed, right? So if some place is a cool 25 degrees Celsius or a cool 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's just the way it is naturally there. If you go to the desert, you're going to have to cool the environment to reach that 75/25 degrees. If you go to the Arctic, you're going to have to heat it up to reach that 25/75. In the desire to replicate that equilibrium, there could have been a danger of stagnation. But with the way that everything read, and because judgment Virgo is showing up in the way that it's showing up, or leading to what it's leading to, with that Hermit looking at the Ace of Pentacles, it's like someone has learned to replicate that equilibrium, but in an authentic way, because authenticity is hot right now. Remember when, as a complete aside, it's fine. We don't have to go there. I feel like, I don't know. There's something in me that's like, really, like, today you're not gonna go there. I was like, yeah, today I'm not. We found a way. You found a way. If this resonates for you, with that Ace of Pentacles being the thing that your star is guiding you to. You found a way to recreate that equilibrium. Your Aries Gemini energy is working harmoniously together as it should to elevate you beyond that Four of Pentacles. I'm going to look for the 10. Queen of Swords is with the Queen of Cups. These energies are like doubling up today. That was what the King of Cups and the King of Pentacles are together. Like, these keep, I'm trying to keep all the cards upright. It's fine. I mean, eventually it will lead to the Ten of Pentacles. I don't know how far. Definitely beyond the 6. Ten of Pentacles is in between the Fool and the Nine of Wands. Under the Fool is the Empress. Before the Nine of Wands is the Wheel of Fortune. And before the Wheel of Fortune is the other title card. Under the Empress is the Six of Cups, just to make it fair. Or even. Nine of Wands. This is the 9 I could have looked for, rather than looking for the major arcana 9. Since it was a 10 of Wands and Ace of Wands, the 9 of Wands is the thing in between them. And there's the 10 of Pentacles. On the other side of the 10 of Pentacles is the Fool. And the Fool takes that leap into a whole new world, literally like off the cliff, right? Crosses that threshold that the Ace of Pentacles sort of opens up. Cool. So yeah, that equilibrium just exists at the heart of creation. That's why I wouldn't necessarily say it's a balancing of forces, because balancing of forces implies that it implies like effort, you know, and you found a way or have discovered your way of maintaining your own equilibrium. And because you've attained and are capable of maintaining that equilibrium, it allows you to discern what the needs are and to flawlessly execute. And that leads to like quality work, right? So cool. Beginnings, the Fool, yes. The truth of the heart made plain. I mean, that could be anything. Maybe the truth of your heart's desires are made plain, right? Like, let's say that because you experienced lack in some way, you always thought you wanted something, but in all honesty, maybe it's like you don't really prefer it, right? So let's say that there is limited access to whatever. And so you make do with what you have and you learn to enjoy it, because the presence of the thing is better than the presence of something is better than the absence of the thing. But then when your circumstances change and you experience more, you discover how much you actually prefer like something else, right? Like if you're hungry and girl, low-hanging fruit. It's fine. The Two of Cups again. Oh, it's the only card that came out this time. Last time, the Two of Cups came out with the Seven of Cups. This time, it's just the Two of Cups. Which maybe in and of itself is interesting. Or is telling. Before the Two of Cups, it's almost like it was an option among other options. But as you settle into your equilibrium, it's like other things like phase out. Right? Because with equilibrium, it's like what goes in. Equilibrium is a net zero process. What is consumed is removed, right? If you consume carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, or if you consume carbon dioxide and water, because that's a little more feasible than like oxygen gas, hydrogen gas, and like solid carbon. If you consume carbon dioxide and water and you start spitting out sugars formulaically, that is a reconfiguration of that carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. She's giving stoichiometry. Stoichiometry is basically the conservation of mass as it applies to a chemical formulation, right? So you have to account for the hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. I got like formulas floating in my brain right now. But to make it simple, you have H2O plus oxygen. You have like hydrogen plus oxygen equals water. Water is H2O. So you have to put at least two H's in to get H2O. So you can't do H plus O equals H2O because that's just HO, right? You need two H's. Twice as much H as O to get water. Stoichiometrically, the hydrogen is consistent on both sides. The oxygen is consistent on both sides. Again, this is one of those things where it's like the deeper I get into the metaphor, maybe the further I get away from the point, or the easier it is for me to lose track of the point. That's what equilibrium is, right? It's the balancing of forces. It's that, not the balancing of forces, it's the net zero. So if there is something that would come into the system that the system cannot effectively integrate, process, whatever, it's like it'll be rejected. Because if it comes into the system and it stays in the system, the equilibrium is disrupted. And so all of the things that would like take too much, or that all the things that would require more than they give, or that would give more than they require, anything that would lead to excess or absence, it doesn't fit within that equilibrium framework. So essentially, all of the non-Two of Cups options and that Seven of Cups smorgasbord fall away. So it's that certain level that one naturally reaches on their journey where there are certain things that they don't have to worry about, either because they won't manifest them or encounter them, or because if they do, they know they will be able to make an appropriately timed exit, or to have an appropriately timed departure, right? So that the equilibrium is maintained, right? It's like if there are certain starches that your body can't digest, you excrete it, and you excrete it whole. If you can't break it down, then it goes out whole, right? If we can't make sugar, if we intake carbon dioxide and water, we will expel carbon dioxide and water if it can't be turned into anything else type of energy. Cool. Bottom of the deck is the King of Swords. Under that is the Two of Pentacles. Two of Pentacles was the card of stagnation in that like minor arcana justice energy. I'm looking at these faces. So in this Two of Cups, I notice that the individual B is reaching out for the cup of individual A. And individual A is kind of, I can't tell if she's giving stank face. It's looking kind of stank face. And then the King of Swords is sitting over here looking kind of stank face. It gives me the energy of like for when it comes to absence, right? Sometimes it is easy to be deceived into thinking something, for example, when we've never experienced the thing, right? If we don't know what an apple is and someone is like, hey, this is what an apple is, and we don't have a reason to, if we trust them for whatever reason, be it inherently or because they've earned it, if they're like, hey, this is what an apple is, we'll take their word for it, right? Our parents and the people that we surround ourselves with teach us a lot of things growing up, right? They say this is the color red, this is the letter R, and it makes a sound, and we accept it or we learn it. At the very least, we learn. But this is the energy of like someone who has been treated right or someone who knows the truth, they're not going to be as easily deceived. If someone knows what an apple is, you can go, this is an apple. And they'll go like, no, that's a keyboard. Like that's a mouse, a computer mouse. That's not an apple. Or they could go, I don't know what that is, but I know it's not an apple. For one, apples are edible. This, yeah, technically you can eat it, but it does not fall into the classification of things that are edible. And like that's this kind of energy. It's like because individual A has had a King of Swords to tell them right or properly or better, they become more discerning for individual Bs that like reach for that cup. And again, that plays into the whole like how it's like a natural state of equilibrium. It's when someone goes from like balancing forces to being at equilibrium, where it's like natural, right? Cool. So that's all of this. I'm glad I prefaced this with the whole like it could be a current situation or set of circumstances that causes a larger, perhaps more archetypal energy for us to see a certain side of it that is very much so a part, piece, and facet of that, but it may be different than one that we've seen before. Because I wouldn't necessarily say this is a whole recontextualization of judgment energy, but yeah. And it, again, it happens because the things that are supposed to work together are working together and their harmonious union or harmonious efforts, harmonious collaborative effort gives rise to deeper understanding or a more rich and fulfilling whatever. So cool. I pushed an hour and a half to 2 hours because that's what I do best. And yeah, I hope you all have an amazing whatever, whenever you see this. I hope you're acting in alignment to make all that you wish to experience your reality. I hope that whatever, whoever you need along your path, journey, and way you find. And until next time, thanks again, Holly, for stopping by. That has been this. I've honestly, this is the first time I've like used it. I've spent most of my time like building it. And there are still like other functions that I want to build out. For example, like I have this page and oh, it just crashed. Oh, that's because one second. I was building out the next function that I want to use and it's not complete. So it crashed because it's like, hey, there's nothing here. It's like, what are you talking about? You make reference to this variable question mark that doesn't exist. Like, what are you talking about? What are you asking me? Okay, so let's see if it'll come back. Did it come back? Oh, wait, I'm not even on the right. Yay, it came back. We don't need this one yet. So if you see, because I literally did this today. So first, I just had the inputs. I had the check boxes to check which dice I want to roll. I had the inputs to put the number of times I wanted to roll, and then I had the output box. Then, like I said earlier, I added the prompt box because sometimes I forget why I'm doing what I'm doing because the tangents, girl, they span. The tangents, it's like the trains run longer than my memory and attention span sometimes. And the Pisces in me, the Mercury and Pisces in me, the Mercury retrograde in the 12th house in Pisces in me just gets like lost sometimes. Or like I forget why I'm going down certain tracks. And I tend to kind of over explain, or I tend to explain how I reached the conclusion that I reached or where something is taking me. And then it's like, sometimes it's just like there are so many things that I got one mouth and so much brain in terms of thoughts. Anyway, so I came up with a prompt box. And then today I was like, okay, but if I were actually doing this, like I mentioned this earlier too, I would want to be able to have everything in one place and type up the notes. Because right now, what I'll do is if I'm doing something personal, I have a journal app that I'll use and I'll take pictures or screenshots so I can like have the references there, the material there, if I'm for whatever reason looking at it later and I want to see it again, right? This way, it's like all in one place. So I added this add notes button. And like, girl, right now, I'll just show you what it looks like. Again, this is not finished, but yeah, there you go. So like the top box will have the outputs from whatever the dice are, and then I can like add the notes there on the bottom. So I already know how I'm gonna do it. So all I gotta do is code it. But anyway. Yeah, this is the first time I've like actually used it. So cool. I already did my outro thing. I guess there's nothing left to say. There's a whole like this year, like I said before, it has been none of what I have expected in the best and the ultimately for the best. Like I've been changed for good because of 2025. And for a while, it's like, who can say if I've been changed for the better? But I know I've been changed for good. Now it's like, I know that I've been changed for the better. And at the same time, like, I know that I've been changed for good. And again, none of it was expected. All of it was what I need. And there are some things that have been so convoluted, I guess, in a way of like this kind of sort of this, um, yeah, because the chariot was there in a way, like things that are supposed to work together have been. Should I timestamp this? I'll timestamp like 2 hours. Um, I'll say rolls at 0000 and ramble at approx 20000. That's crazy. Um, I love being able to just like edit this on the fly. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, and I guess in a way, because I was kind of gonna, I had this realization today. I've had this again. This year has been so unexpected in so many ways. Even like at the tail end of last year, going into this year, and it's helped me get clarity on so much. I can put this away. Actually, oh, and I got my notes right here. So I can type my notes as I'm talking about this, and maybe I'll dig into it later. We'll say Patrick's 2025. We'll put them all on, and we'll do random for all of them. Why not? I do have the random limits set. Cancer, Capricorn, the Empress, and the Ace of Realms, Ace of Pentacles. Temperance, Judgment, and the Chariot. Null on the D12. Heart in the. That's so interesting. On the D8, again, it's random, so it could have been any number. It's the heart and the root. And then on the other side, on the D6, it's the root and the heart. And then we're operating between air and earth, which, again, feels appropriate. Well, kind of. And I'll say why. Like, oh, gosh. Oh, I'm going to take a picture because I do actually, like, kind of want to dig into this. And the whole, like, another functionality that I want to add is a print button. So if you look on the notes page or on the notes tab, you'll see the little printer button in the top right. Again, that's an idea that I literally just had because it's like, not only do I want to take the notes, I also want to be able to save it if I want to reference it later. So, hey, girl, I am my end user. And so these are things that I think about as I'm like, girl, I know me. I'm going to forget why I'm rolling. So let's put the input prompt box. And I'm going to want to take notes probably, especially because when I write, like writing slash typing for me is a lot different than just like reading slash speaking. And it's because if I'm writing something, I get to more freely engage my dynamic mind. Because I can start a thought and start another thought and start another thought and finish this and then go up here and finish that and then go here and finish that, or as much as I can. So it allows me to like jump, but still complete things. And it's written, so it brings it back to my mind so I know why I went on a certain tangent. Anyway, that's one of the reasons why it's different. It's just different. Anyway, I know me. Yeah, I'm an end user. So again, there is no plan on like at its inception and creation. There was no plan in like sharing this. It's just something personal that for me. So, but this is interesting. And Cancer and Capricorn are like they oppose. Wow. Yeah, and it goes from like temperance, judgment, and the chariot is so perfect for that opposing Cancer Capricorn. Because at first, it's not that it was like necessarily stagnant, but there were these two completely, it's almost like with temperance, there were these two things that were held sort of apart. And then in the judgment of it, it helped me see how interconnected a lot of things are. And there are some truths that I hold that were hidden or buried beneath or behind traumas. And like, not necessarily vice versa, but like the middle, like pretty much not necessarily the middle of the year, but when I was like, I did the whole like, I don't police, I make my peace. I don't this, I that. Like that was a part of that like judgment, sort of like realizing the interplay. And today, recently, it's been again, this year was so many things that I did not expect. And there were almost like these very stark transitions from like one thing to another. Or it's been, whatever. Um And so there was a time, girl, I feel like in a way, This has been one of the most challenging years. Girl, what the freak? I feel like it's been one of the more challenging, probably the most challenging year I've had since my journey began. Honestly, because back in like March, April, I was like, girl, I ain't been triggered like this since like pre-journey. Like, and then like, but it's been so much of, I'll say this year has been a lot of separating truths from traumas. And like clarity has been all over this year. And it's clarity that I've needed, or clarity that I need. I would say I've needed, and I may continue to need in terms of like some of the trauma responses to certain things were like almost I don't I can't think of a proper word for it. But some of the trauma responses I had were like morphed truths that I hold. But it's like a truth that was formed into a weapon, or a truth that was formed into a shield, or a truth that was formed into a wall, right? And so it's like at one point, it's been so like they're so intertwined. It's like inherently like convoluted and very hard to like pull apart. Plus, in general, I'm not a person of singular reasoning. Meaning, if I do something, like there are multiple reasons why I'm doing something. Or if I've reached a decision or if I arrive at a conclusion, there are multiple reasons, multiple pathways that led me to that conclusion or decision. And again, like you can probably tell by the way I just like tangent, tangent, tangent when I'm trying to like explain something. More often than not, there are multiple lines that run to the same station. And it's only when a station gets so many lines and so much traffic that it becomes canonized in the neural network of my brain or whatever. Um, so, here towards the end, sorry, here towards the end, again, it's like I have not been triggered like this in some of these ways since literally before the darkest night. And so, but it's like I've journeyed so much of my journey that it's been beneficial, question mark, definitely insightful in those clarifying moments of like untangling the truth from the trauma, or like separating out. And it's almost like sometimes it's like there's truth and then there's the trauma and then there's the whatever. Sometimes it's like rather than the trauma being a pure trauma response, it's like this is a shadow expression of my truth. And this is a light expression of the same truth. And depending on the situation, circumstance, environment, whatever, it will naturally pull forward either this side of my truth or that side of my truth. Either way, like, I am the same me. The truth is what the truth is, right? And it's just like, and so a big part of like early 2019, I want to say for me, like very early in my journey, was like what some people would call shadow integration, I guess. Like at that point, early 2019, that's before I found like YouTube. That's before I found the spiritual side of YouTube. So I journeyed a lot of my journey in the beginning. I set a lot of the foundations like internally and intuitively before I found like a lot of like language and other modalities and stuff like that. And like again, I'm saying this year has been challenging in the best and worst ways. Again, I felt triggered like I haven't felt triggered in a long time. And I feel like, too, the reasons it's like I'm so close to like there were trauma responses that I built up internally to keep myself from like getting too hopeful or to keep myself from striving too much or believing or hoping too much. Like there were walls that were lined with bars, cages. I built cages. And there are cages inside of cages inside of cages that I built for myself. And I know this about me. I've known this about me like literally all my life. A lot of these cages were built intentionally. And as toxic as I knew it was at the time, it's where I was in life. And it's what I thought my life would be. And the past 5 years of my life have proven over and over and over and over and over and over and over again that my life is not what it's so much more than I thought it would be. And I have so quickly it's like not only have I so quickly outgrown some of those cages, but this was also the year where it's like there were cages that I had like outgrown and moved out of that I didn't even realize I was living outside of until, and it's like, it wasn't the first time I had the experience. No, until it had literally become a part of it had become like part of that harmony, right? To like the stability of the four to the harmony of the six plus, it had become a part of that harmony. And when it was so fluidly, smoothly, fluidly, when it was so fluidly integrated into like my life, that's when I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm outside of the cage. I was like, I'm outside of the cage. I didn't even know. I didn't know when the door opened. I didn't know when I walked out of the cage. I've been outside of the cage for like months now and not freaking out about not being outside of the cage because this is a cage that I told myself a long time ago when I was like within the cage, within the cage, within the cage, within the cage. When I constructed this cage back then, I told myself I would never, ever, ever leave this cage. And I have been outside of the cage. And girl, that is what triggered me. Like real bad. Um, and so again, it was like that was like the trauma response. But there's also truth in it. And the truth of some of that is just like boundaries, honestly, sometimes. Like, not everyone, different people are apparently different. I am of the mind, I am of the type, not everyone gets the same level of access to me. And because not everyone gets the same level of access to me, not everyone gets the same version of me, right? Because if I don't feel that like my vulnerability will be appreciated, respected, whatever, I'm not going to be vulnerable and I'm not going to feel pressured to be vulnerable because I have environments where I can be vulnerable. I have environments where I can be safe. So I don't, and those things are earned. And rather it's a learned earning or it's an intuitive earning, right? Intuitively, like your vibe, like you feel safe. And so you just like type of energy anyway. Um, but yeah, so I had like another sort of, and like it was foretold. Mercury in its pre-shadow, I was reminded this year why I don't like Mercury retrograding water signs. And I'm pretty sure in like 2019 and maybe also 2020, or maybe it was like 2018 and 2019, Mercury almost exclusively retrograded water signs. And it was like 2 years back to back. And in the pre shadow, I would reach a point of like inner peace, you could say. Or I would have a conversation with myself that was like 1 year, it was very much like there was a part of my strength for a long time that was built upon trauma. And it was like, I am never going to be in this situation again. And if I find myself in this situation again, I'm not going to handle it like I handled it the last time. I am not going to handle it like I handled it the last time. And for a long time, that was what my strength was like built upon. And then one day I get this download. Again, I say this because it's like I had so many experiences before I discovered the lexicon. I'm like, girl, is this that? Is that this? Is it even necessarily exactly the same across everybody? I don't know. Anyway, you could probably call it a download. One day my spirit was just like, I've journeyed enough at this point. This was roughly 6, 7 months into my journey. It was very, very heavily loaded on the front end because honestly, it's what I needed. Um, but I was like, I've reached the point where I don't need that for me to be strong anymore. So I went through this whole thing and I shed tears and I was like, I let that part of me go because again, that part of me was very much so stuck there. And then that was in like the pre-shadow period, girl. And it's only when I looked back, because at this point in time, I wasn't in like the whole Mercury retrograde astrology of it all, but I knew the time period. And I looked back and it was in that pre-shadow period where Mercury was like retrograde in Cancer. I had this like beautiful moment. And then I'm like living my best life during the actual retrograde. And then the post shadow happens. And I get triggered. And it wasn't even triggered in a way, it was definitely like vindication type of whatever. I was like, see, I was like, oh, hyping myself up. And I was like, girl, like I literally just said, I don't need this because I don't need this for me to be strong anymore. I don't need to feel vindicated in these ways anymore. Actually, that was the retrograde. So the pre shadow was me doing the whole like, I release myself or that part of me from that because I don't need that to be strong anymore. And then the retrograde was me and myself, like living the letting go. And then the post shadow was when the universe was like, okay, prove it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then it happened when Mercury went retrograde in Scorpio later that year. Because I was having some issues and I was in a very justifiably sour mood. And then Mercury pre-shadow comes and it's again, it's like, you shouldn't be so whatever. And I fought all pre-shadow because again, I felt justified. The retrograde happens. I'm like, okay, we're cool. I am a new man. I am living my life. And then the post shadow comes and the universe is like, prove it. And every time I've been asked to prove it, it's like I was exposed to the idea of the thing. I was given the time to work towards acceptance in myself and to do what I needed to do logistically, emotionally, all that kind of stuff to reach whatever spot. And then when it came time to prove it, I was able to show up in a way that reflected the change that I intuited slash was inspired slash was required to make. And again, like I was able to show up in a way that made me proud, but in a way where I could have been completely like vindicated if I chose to show up in another way. Right. So Mercury, and again, it started in Sagittarius before it went back into Scorpio, but I guess that Scorpio bit was enough. Pre shadow was in Scorpio, post shadow started in Scorpio before it went back into Sagittarius because I had my whole cute little pre shadow moment. I reach, my conclusion and I'm having these conversations and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great about myself. I'm feeling like I've done what I'm supposed to do. Forgot. I completely forgot because I don't know if it's because the last few Mercury retrogrades haven't been in water signs or if they just ain't been that trying for me lately. But when that post shadow hit, I was like, oh my God. I even texted my journey buddy. I'm pretty sure I either texted her or I sent her a voice note. And I was like, I remember why I don't like Mercury retrograding water signs because of the ways that it challenges me to grow and the things that it asks of a grown me. And so I had that moment. And when I had the moment, I think every time I've had those moments where the universe is like, prove it. And by the universe, it's like literally the unfolding of circumstances and situations. Every time I've had that prove it moment, again, like I've been given enough heads up to work through it that it makes it easier to show up. And every time it's like I handle it a lot better than I would have thought because of Taurus moon, fixed emotions, and other things. Um, but yeah, like this time it didn't necessarily go the way that I had feared it might go. Um, and even some other stuff. And again, it was so fun because it was like this decoupling the truth from the trauma. But this, like, usually it's more condensed. This time it was like drawn out. Probably started when Mercury was in Cancer. No, I'm like, I need to look at where Mercury was. But it probably did start when Mercury was in Cancer. That water trine gave me a little bit of a teaser. Or when it moved into Leo. Because it was around that Cancer Leo time of the year. And Mercury is not too far from the sun. So anyway, back early in my journey, the top part of 2019, I went through what you could call a shadow integration. And it's like I had this realization earlier today. I've been talking for so long. Again, I kind of lost the point a little bit. And I'm not even taking notes, which is fine. I can just watch this later, I guess. So I had this moment in the triggery of it all where I was just like, you know what? I'm used to like heartbreak. I'm used to disappointment. I was not great to me for a very long time. And I'm not going to talk too much about it because I don't feel like crying tonight. But yeah, I wasn't very great to myself for a very long time. And a lot of the like emotional turmoil I experienced, a fair amount of it was self-motivated. And so when in the triggery of it all, when I reached that moment of like, you know what, I'm used to disappointment, I'm used to heartache, I'm used to heartbreak, I'm used to these heavier negative emotions, which also reads as I'm not used to the good ones. And I even tell my journey buddy, I was like, I'm so glad that I get to work through and experience so much of what I'm working through and experiencing in the environment that I'm experiencing it because it makes me feel more prepared for when things shift because these are things that I would prefer to have worked out before things shift in the ways that they're shifting. Um, And so I was like, I'm very grateful for that. If there's anything to be grateful for in all of the everything that's happening, I can be grateful for the safe space that I have and in the environment that I have to like work all of this out and to decouple the truth from the trauma. So earlier today, or maybe yesterday, maybe it was like later last night, I had this like shadow integration moment where the shadow popped up and was like, hey, like as used to disappointment as you are, and as used to heartbreak and stuff like that as you are, like, does that not mean that you can fully pursue the things that you want to pursue? And if they don't work out, like, hey, you're used to it, right? Basically, like, these things don't have to be self inflicted, but you can't keep like doing this to yourself. I mean, it was like you can because I can do anything. But it's like you don't have to. But it was just very much so like if you say that these are all things that you're used to, then like what are you afraid of? Like if this is something that you're going to intentionally, if this is a position that you're going to intentionally put yourself in, if you try and you fail and you end up here, like what's the harm? Right? At least you would have tried. At least you would have striven for something. At least you would have like really pursued it. Because that again, but I had conditioned myself cages within cages within cages within cages within cages since I was literally a child. Um, and again, it's been so much of like not only well, that's part of being in a safe space, but it's like, as I have these conversations, it's like not that big of a deal. And as mind blowing as it is, sometimes having conversations can be productive and can lead to desirable results, can lead to changes that are amazing and great, right? Because that's like literally the whole point. Um, so yeah, that was like the other day, like yesterday, I think. And now I'm just like, wow, because again, that was the thing about the end of 2024. The end of 2024 was was the beginning of this season of like I am free to fully pursue the things that I know are for me. And 2024 felt like wide open. The end of 2024 felt like wide open. But then the reality of 2025 was like all of these things that I was still carrying. And it's like things that I didn't know that I was carrying because my environment didn't trigger me. Honestly, because I wasn't triggered in the ways that like informed me that they were still kind of rooted in there. Right. Because it's like ultimately, again, it's that whole like Mercury pre shadow, the retrograde and the post retrograde thing of like in the pre shadow, mentally, emotionally, I work through everything. In the actual retrograde, it's like things sort of anchor in and I get to like reslot, reconfigure, rebuild, I guess, myself or sense of self. But then in the post shadow, that's when it like I could say it's that whole like prove it, but again, by the point in time where it rolls back around, it's just like it has become so integrated within myself already that it doesn't require much effort. The only effort it requires from me really is to sort of like make that first step. And then like I just keep on walking because of what I've like experienced, gone through, reached within myself, collaboratively, of course, with the divine and stuff like that. Where it's like, okay, I can do this. Like, what was I worried about? What was I freaking out about? It honestly wasn't that bad. And I'm getting so much out of this thing that I was ready to just completely throw away. Cages within cages within cages. And they have all been opened. And so, yeah, that was a lot of this year, but it's come in like waves and it's come in phases. And again, it makes me really excited for what comes next because I've built, it's almost like I've done a lot of like the therapy in like physical in like a physical therapy sense. Like I've done a lot of isolated exercises and flexibility movement building and like isolated strength training, but now it's like I'm like maneuvering, right? And it's like, okay. So yeah, ultimately an hour and a half later, according to the timestamp, that's been a lot of this year. And it makes me really excited for what comes next. And it's also been very involved. And so I feel like I've been in my own little world for like most of the year because when it comes to stuff like this, like I have my journey buddy, I have my mom, my number one fan. There are people in my life that I could process through a lot of this stuff with, but I like to process through a lot of it on my own, at least initially, because it's like, if you're learning something and someone's there to help you, my approach is to do as much as I can on my own until I get stuck and then ask for help because I'm learning, right? And so as I'm doing as much as I can on my own, it's like I'm sort of like learning the ins and outs of the process. I'm getting this, not necessarily a fundamental understanding, but I'm able to like, as I'm learning something, I'm able to see similarities between like what I'm currently learning and other things that I know that I've previously learned, to find like analogs or to be able to like to propose certain hypotheses and then to like test them to see if like, okay, if this is an analog of that and if I can do this over here, can I do that over here? And a lot of times it'll be like, yeah, and it's like, oh, cool. Or it'll be like, no, and then it's like, oh, well, if I can't, then there's something different. Like, where's the difference? And it's like, well, this is the thing that's different. And it's like, oh, okay, that's something I can work with. You know what I mean? Like, this is what I'm actually learning in this situation because a lot of this is analogous to something that I've already learned. Anyway, I feel appropriately rambled. I have, yeah, it's fine. I'm supposed to eat dinner. I will eat. It's all fine. Um, but yeah, that's where I'm ending the year. And so I'm ending the year in a very grateful position, but also kind of like so much of this year was for good. Ultimately, it's for the good. None of it was for bad. Um, I was like, yeah, what was? And then like 2026 is like a 10 numerologically. Reem said it's the fire horse. And I was like, ooh, girl. Was it the wood snake? I forget what snake it was. Um, I was like, ooh, okay. And yeah. So ultimately, I feel like all of these sort of make sense. You know what I mean? Now, oh snap! Oh snap! It's a muffin. I'm doing all right. How are you? See, my plan was to be on the PlayStation, but I've been live for like 2 hours and 40 minutes, so that didn't happen. Also, this is a complete aside. I downloaded the Warframe companion app, and I I like it. I'm a fan. Um, I was like, I've been making ciphers offline today. One of my Warframe, like the last component, I guess, finished. And I was on the treadmill and I was like, oh crap, I can't go upstairs and log in and start building the Warframe. But I was like, oh yeah, I downloaded the app. So I was able to, because it's 72 hours when you're building a Warframe. Um, oh, snap. I was just looking at Hydroid Prime last night. Mostly because I think one of the pieces requires argon crystals, and I had a whole bunch of them. I just like donated them to the clan. I don't know if they still expire when you donate them to the clan, but I also don't know if there's any other clan research that requires argon crystals. So, but I guess they're in there. But yeah, I was like, oh snap, I can like start the Foundry from my phone. So that's what I did. But yeah, I'm doing all right. How are you? Hopefully I'll be wrapping this up soon. But yeah, now in the chariot of it all, it's like I've worked through, and I don't, there's still things that I'm like thinking about. For example, like at the end of last year and the top of this year, I was really excited for a move. But then when I went home and visited family, I was like, man, like all of my family is here. I don't know if I necessarily want to move so far away. And then I came back, and now I feel like somewhere in between. But also I guess I'm at that point where it's like, I don't know, you know, still thinking about it. So anyway, I see it. The heart and the root and the heart, it makes sense. Air and earth makes sense. It all makes sense. I'm going to type up in the notes and probably build this desktop out app out more. And then I was thinking, since I've already done a lot of the coding for the desktop app, I can use the same programs, excuse me, to make a mobile app. And since I have an Android phone, I can install it on my phone. I don't have to necessarily have a developer account and everything. So we'll see how far I get in this process. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe I'll work on it some more. So, yeah. All right. Again, I hope you all have an amazing whatever whenever you see this. I hope you're acting in alignment to make all that you wish to experience your reality. I hope that whatever you need along your path, journey, and way you find, no matter how challenging or frustrating or irritating or whatever it can be at the time. And I hope that you see or find the why, the rhyme, or the reason behind it. And until next time, um, keep on keeping on. Cause oh yeah, love you later. I told Sonny, I was like, I was on the phone with mom, and I was like, love you later. He was like, what does that mean? Like, love you now. I was like, that. I was like, that was my first reaction when I heard it too. And then, of course, Mama, she was like, the whole explanation. We were like, okay, we get it. All right, I'll see y'all later.